You are watching and listening to the Two Chumps Football Podcast. I'm Chad Wilson. It's Emil Calomino. Steaming right along. We are into, what is this, week 13? College football, week 12,
Yes.
NFL season. Tumbling right along. We're trying to sort things out in college football, figure out who are the 12 best teams in the nation, or at least the 12 teams according to the way this thing is structured that are going to end up in that final tournament. I'm a little excited about that just to see how that works out. And in the NFL, we're trying to separate the frauds from the who are the real deals. It's a little easier in the NFC to figure out who that is. Not so much in the AFC as they're still jostling around, but that's not exactly what we do here on this show. We are week to week just trying to tell you who we think are going to win these games this week and by how much. And we're going to do that. So coming up on the show, we're going to recap our college football because we have to. We have to do that. And then we're going to give you a brand new slate of picks there. So we can try and sort things out on that end. We're also going to talk NFL football, where we are on fire, folks. You're going to want to stay tuned to hear how well we are doing and also pick up these picks. I got to give myself a pat on the back. I don't know if I've ever been at this point in an NFL season doing quite this well. I've had some good NFL seasons. Be where I am right now.
No, you're having a great NFL season, and fortunately, I've gotten on a run, so our NFL has been on fire. I said to you last weekend, I think we're going to have to recalibrate the way we attack college football next year. I think the portal and some other things have really changed the way you handicap the sport. It's become, for lack of a better word, much more random than it used to be. At least in my eyes.
It's all random, but even more randomer, if we could say
Randomer. Is that a word?
It's a word now.
It is now,
especially
right?
when you look at how things have gone in this college football season. So we're just going to have to roll with the punches, make our adjustments, just like the coaches are supposed to do each and every week. And so we will go from there. If this is your first time tuning in or you haven't had a chance to do it already, go ahead and hit the subscribe button on whatever you are choosing to absorb this content with, whether that is you're streaming it on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, whatever your listening device, weapon of choice is. Go ahead and hit the subscribe button there. If you're watching us on YouTube, would appreciate a subscribe, a like, and drop a comment on there. That always helps boost the show, helps more people come on. We have more fun. We do more things, and everyone feels more invigorated. All right, Emil, let's get to it. College football didn't really treat us that well last week, but we're here.
Well, I'm bitching. I'm bitching. I had, excluding off the sheet, which we'll get to, I had a winning week in college football. It's just been a terrible season.
Yes.
I was 2-1 on the week. My two winners were, Penn State, which I always say they're the ultimate bully. If you find a big line with Penn State and James Franklin, generally, if he can, he will do his damnedest to cover it for you. And if he doesn't, it's not because he wasn't trying to cover it. Okay?
Well, Purdue has been one of the ultimate pillows in college football this year. When it comes to allowing someone to cover, them and Penn State have been gold.
But I got a little nervous when it was like 35-10 and Purdue crept inside the number. And sure as hell, Franklin looked up and said, "Oh, no, we're covering this baby." So they won by
definitely one of those games where you know the spread and you got to get it covered.
Oregon never had a chance to cover. That was a very disappointing performance on the road against Wisconsin. I'm shocked that Oregon only managed to score 16 points in that game. If you told me somehow the defense was lazy and didn't cover, I'd be like, okay, that's an effort thing. But I'm just shocked that Wisconsin was able to hold Oregon to 16 points.
Just a note on that game. The opponents like that, this is very much like Miami versus Georgia Tech. When you're going up against an offense that has the ability to control the line of scrimmage, run the football, shorten the football game, it has the effect of doing that. It does two things to you. One, the obvious thing is that it shortens the game, and so you have the ball less when you're in Oregon and you're, quote unquote, a dynamic offense. Number two is it changes your play calling. So where you go from being a more balanced type team, and that's really how you go about getting down the field and getting in the end zone, you start feeling more pressure every time you get the football. So now you're throwing the ball more, you're making different calls in different situations. It leads to more 3-and-outs. When you get a 3-and-out, You're putting that offense back on the field. Your defense is out there a little gassed, and they just start getting first downs, eating up more time, and then it just feeds. It's like compound interest.
Yeah,
So that
it's frustration in a boxing match. Similar style
sure.
frustrates you. Georgia was a winner for me. I didn't feel good mid-second quarter, but then it was like somebody slapped them across the face and said, "Damn it, you're Georgia!" And they played that last 2.5 quarters like Georgia. I mean, they went out, they ran the ball, they dominated defensively, so that was a win.
If
I
we
was
are talking about random this year, SEC's been random. SEC has been major league random. Uh, Georgia having a problem with South Carolina. Georgia losing a couple of games that they've lost. Texas losing a game to Georgia. Vanderbilt doing what they've done. South Carolina doing what they've done. Expecting Kentucky to be better than they should, than they have been, and they're not. Tennessee is up one week, down the next. The SEC has been super random. I think they probably made sports books a gang of money this year.
Well, yeah. I mean, I think part of it is they wanted to create an NFL model, and they sort of have, and maybe that's one thing we're going to have to start as people that follow sports betting, and that's what this show is. We're going to have to start incorporating that, I think, a little bit more into our mindset. I always handicapped the NFL and college majorly differently.
Yeah.
And I'm not sure they're that different in these big conferences, especially the SEC and the Big Ten, where you do have a lot of these power schools. It may be more of an NFL model. We'll have to look at that in the offseason, but I think you're going to see more of that where road favorites in the NFL typically struggle, and you're seeing that in college. Like Texas barely gets by Vanderbilt on the road.
Right.
So, anyway, moving over to yours. Your winner was Baylor.
Thank God for that.
Thank God for that, right? BYU finally, the game we early in the season, if you remember earlier, I saw a line like this with BYU against UCF and thought I'd be cute, figuring that doesn't make sense. And
Right.
BYU drilled them. This seems to be that game. Unfortunately, you were on the wrong end of it. They
I
put
don't think
BYU.
I've been good with BYU games this year. I'm not sure. I haven't been good with Kansas. So
And remember, Kansas was, they, for whatever reason, struggled early, lost a lot of close games. Kansas was well regarded coming into the season.
Kansas' big deal is inconsistent play at quarterback. One
Yeah.
week, kid is Superman. The next week, it's like, how are you on scholarship?
Yes, and when he plays well, they're tough, and
Yes.
they were tough. So you took a loss, and then Utah, a pick I really liked. I thought they'd play this game, more Utah-ish. And for a while, they hung with Colorado, but the mistakes, the lack of consistency on offense, eventually the floodgates opened and they were
Let me give a
overwhelmed.
little more credit to Colorado there. As I really sat here and watched this, it's been obvious to me at a midpoint here that Colorado is a better football team than even I thought they would be. I thought they'd be like a 500 football
Yeah,
team this year, just taking the next step from last year up to this year. Because I was of the firm belief that they're going to be a good football team. Deion Sanders is a good football coach, so they'll get there. Just getting there a little faster than I thought they would. Utah was trying to do, like you said, the Utah type of thing. What's really good for Colorado and separating them is that even when you're trying to play this kind of control the line of scrimmage game, bully you, and that would have worked in years past, it worked for them last year against Colorado, that Colorado now just has so many playmakers that they can get that big play and just really drive you out of that game plan, force you to play their game where you're trying to play catch up.
yep.
And right now, it's hard to do that with Colorado because of all the guys they have that can make plays.
But I will put them on upset watch this week. I mean, it's not a pick of mine, but
I'm not messing with them like that
no,
anymore.
I'm not messing with them. But I think you got to be careful. Let's get to the picks. I've got three that I feel pretty good about. I mean, I can't feel great the way my season's been going. I mean, I'm 14-22.
Where am
You're
I at?
15-21. So, obviously college has not been our thing, but let's start, as you say. I think there'll be somebody looking at a line this week. There's been a lot of talk of, is Texas all that? They struggled at Arkansas last week. And again, more of the NFL model. Texas on the road, big favorite at Arkansas last week, wins the game, but not in impressive fashion, 20-10. But here's the thing I do like about Texas. They're playing some defense this year. And a matter of fact, I think they lead the SEC in defense, or they're right near the top. And I think eventually they've got enough offensively that something's off, but I think Sark will figure that out. They have a game with Kentucky this week. Kentucky's been hard to figure out. We know at home, I think they played Georgia to a 1-point game. Here we go. They're going to Texas, and I think even though it's in front of the A&M game, I think Texas has heard the stuff that, hey, they're not that good. If they lose the A&M game, they're out of the playoff. Blah 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 blah. I think they come out and make a statement this week, and I think Kentucky's the perfect team to do that against. Sometimes offensively challenged Kentucky can be. I think Texas can keep them down with their defense, and then they get the offense rolling, and they're going to want to get the offense rolling before the A&M game. So I'm going to take Texas, and I'm going to lay the 20.5. Next up, we have a team that's surprised me a little this year. They've shown some fight. They've hung in games, like with Georgia in the big rivalry game. It's Florida, okay? They were playing Georgia pretty even. They lost by a couple scores. They come out last week. They beat LSU. They put Brian Kelly on the hot seat. And here they have Ole Miss rolling in as a 10.5-point favorite. And again, I'm going to kind of use the NFL model here. Middle of the road Florida team at home. I take them up a notch. And I look at Ole Miss already thinking playoff. Mississippi State's the last game of the year. They stink. They know they're going to win that big rivalry game. Maybe they overlook Florida here a little bit. Now, do I think Florida gets the outright? Nah, they probably figure out a way to lose the game at the end. But I think they can certainly hang within 10.5 points. So I'm going to take Florida plus the 10.5. And then finally, another team that I think may be out over their skis a little bit, because if you look at their schedule, next week I think they have Maryland. This Penn State, really, this is the last hurdle to probably making the playoff. They're going to not make the Big Ten title game, which will be a blessing because they can't pick up another loss. So they just got to get past Minnesota. But I'm telling you what, Fleck's a good coach. Minnesota's a solid program, and they're much, much better at home, like most teams are. But at home, I feel Minnesota really elevates their game. They're physical. They're not going to lay down. And I think 11 is way too much. Cheese on the pizza, as you like to say. Way too much cheese on the pizza for the Nittany Lions. I think this is a tight ball game. Penn State probably wins it by 6 or 7. At the end, I'll take Minnesota plus 11.
All right. My man Emil here is going with Texas, and you get a little, you get a little help here falling under 21. That's a really good thing, although it might not even come down to that, but he likes Texas minus 20.5. He likes Florida to continue on the uptick. I think personally, Billy Napier's done a good job at Florida. Some Florida fans don't want to hear it because they think they should be 11-1 or 12-0 every season. I think he's done a great job because this guy it's a 3-win schedule coming into the season. So I think he's done a really good job there. He likes them plus 10.5. And then he thinks Minnesota is going to hang tough in their ball game against Penn State plus 11. Fleck's a good coach. I agree with you there, Emil. Good to see that. Would you agree with me on the Billy Napier thing?
We did our preseason show and we were both going through the schedule saying where are the wins coming from. To have that team sitting at 5-5, certainly this week's going to be a tough ball game, and then they have Florida State rivalry game. Looking at it, unless there's an upset, I mean, they should be bowl eligible. I mean, I think that's a good job.
Can you believe that? Would never have thought that going into the season, and that was a big win for them. All right, here's what I'm going with, Emil. I'm going to first take off into the ACC. Louisville, I don't know what it is they did last week, going out, losing to Stanford. I guess, we're going to have some of these games now that we've hodgepodged some of these conferences together, and it's a weird travel thing. Louisville going all the way out to California to take on Stanford in the middle of what would have normally been an ACC season. You just break out of your whole East Coast thing, head out west. I guess too much for them. So now they come home. and everyone figures they're going to be all upset because they lost to a team like Stanford, and that very well may be. But, Emil, you know what I say every week? I think odds makers have thrown too much cheese on this pizza. Pittsburgh's another team that has struggled lately in terms of getting W's, but they have been competitive in all of these football games. It comes down to the wire to the end. This is a team that's going to fight you. And, they may not be better than Louisville. We'll find that out on Saturday. But I know one thing, Pittsburgh's teams are going to fight you all the way to the end. You're not just going to get the victory. You're going to have to take the victory. And if Louisville is going to win this football game, I think that's what's going to happen here. I see this thing coming all the way down to the end. And if it's a one-possession football game, the chances of Louisville covering 8 points is very, very slim. So I'm going to take Pittsburgh as the 8-point underdog. They can score. They can play good football off of back-to-back losses. I figure we're going to get their best here. So a team off of back-to-back losses where we're going to get their best versus a team that's pissed off, but better figure out why Stanford was able to score 35 points. I think there's a lot on film for Pittsburgh to exploit in this matchup, and I think this thing goes all the way down to the end. Give me Pittsburgh +8 in that big one in the Big Ten where we try to figure out, is Indiana a fraud? No one likes their schedule. If Indiana loses, they're all the way out of this thing. There's a lot on the table here for Indiana. Their backs are against the wall. Can you believe that? For an undefeated football team, your back is against the wall. But no one respects that I on your helmet. They do respect the O on your opponent's helmet, and that should really piss you off. What I can say about Indiana is, whether you like their schedule or not, they do a really great thing that's great for big underdogs, double-digit underdogs. They score points. Indiana can move the football. It's not one of these things where I've taken underdogs before, and you've probably done this before, Emil, where the team plays really great defense, but golly, if they get down 10 early, you're in serious trouble because you're going to watch this quarterback having to drop back and fumble around and miss throws that are wide open and one-hop them and take sacks. It's not that kind of deal with Indiana. They can get the football, they can move down the field, and they can score points. And that always keeps the back door open if we ever need it. It also helps if they go out and they score early or they get a turnover, they can take the turnovers and turn them into points. And that's what you want with an underdog. Team that can get into the end zone, they can get points. So that gives me a little something here with Indiana. And let's just be honest, Ohio State, though they're being Ohio State on paper, they have not really impressed when you turn the TV on and you really watch them. They'll win games, but it's close to the best. They're not dynamic. They don't explode everywhere. And they're going to need to be that, I think, against Indiana to pull away from them and cover this number because, like I said, Indiana is always in it. So give me Indiana +13. Finally, I'm going to head back out to one of my favorite conferences. I've been in here a lot this year. Sometimes it should be an off the sheet, but it's an on the sheet this week for me. I'm going to take Fresno State in their game against Colorado State. Fresno State's a good football team, folks. You wouldn't know it the last couple of weeks because they've gone out and they lost to Hawaii. Why the hell are you losing to Hawaii? Then they lose to Air Force, who's kind of been a doormat this year. So, despite that, odds makers, who always know more than we do, Emil, have made them 3.5-point favorites against what on paper looks like a pretty decent Colorado State football team. But Colorado State's on this 5-game roll, and I'm not sure that we can have a ton of respect for it. If we're talking about Indiana and their schedule, but Colorado State beat Wyoming at home. Nevada's not been anything. New Mexico, when have we ever, respected New Mexico? They beat Air Force. The only thing on here was that San Jose State win that they've got 5-6 weeks ago. So they're rolling along, probably feeling a little too much about themselves, whereas Fresno State is like, we're not getting a third loss in a row at home against the likes of the Colorado State Rams. On that, I just think Fresno State's the more motivated team here. And then why is Fresno State favored? I'm going to jump with the Bulldogs and take them as 3.5-point favorites in this one.
And I mean, if you look, Colorado State is in position technically to win that conference. So
don't see it happening.
That's what I'm saying. So my friend here, he's got Pitt +8 over Louisville. I like that pick. Then he's got Indiana +13. He feels the Seminole is wide open. That's right. That's the back.
Be careful, folks.
And then finally, he's got Fresno State -3.5, which is a good segue because I can save us a little time.
Hey, sports fans, if you're looking to take your game day excitement to a whole new level, then you got to check out Bovada Sportsbook. Whether you're into football, basketball, it's baseball, playoff times, pretty much any sport, Bovada has everything you need: best odds, live betting, and fast, secure payouts. And here's the best part. When you sign up today, Bovada is giving you a 50% welcome bonus on your first deposit. That's up to $250. That's free money to get you started just for joining the action. It's super easy to sign up, and they've got you covered with all the top games, player props, and more. Ready to bet, win, and repeat? Head over to Bovada and get in the game. Check out the link down in the description below, and let's go get those winners.
We go to our off the sheet segment, which last week, frankly, folks, wasn't kind to us at all.
It's an abortion.
I'm 4-3 off the sheet this year. Chad's 3-4, but I started off on a heater. I won my first 4, then I lost 3 in a row. I had Georgia Southern last week. I don't know what they were doing in that ball game. I mean, that was quite
Feeling themselves.
Yes, and then Chad had San Jose State, and they got waxed by Boise. They hung early, and then not so much. So
yeah, Boise State's another team I've been going against this year. I'm probably 0-3. I'm going to leave Boise State.
Probably leave them alone. And the reason I said it's a good segue from your regular college picks is I consider Fresno State off the sheet, so I'm simply on Fresno State with you in that game. I think.
Yeah, technically, folks, not to stop you. Technically, folks, for those of you just joining in, off the sheet is going to be any game that we pick that's outside of the Power Four, because we know for some of the casuals out there, you just don't really care about anything that's not Big 10, Big 12, SEC, or ETC. So by the rules, he's making an off the sheet pick.
We've got a wide audience. We've got some people that are putting some decent coin on these games, and they don't really care about if they're watching it as much as if they're winning.
Wait till I drop a pick on the Davidson versus Campbell game.
Yeah, they don't. And then we got people who just want the TV games. We understand, but this is off the sheet. I'm on Fresno State. I looked at the line. I'm like, that doesn't make much sense. I'll take Fresno State simply for all the reasons my friend said, plus the fact that the line makes no sense.
All right, I'm going super off the sheet as well. Western Kentucky taking on Liberty, folks. This falls in the Conference USA, so that's definitely off the sheet. It's not the game you're hustling to the TV to watch, but I think Liberty right here is, this game opened up with Western Kentucky, rightfully so, as a favorite. Western Kentucky's the better football team in here, even though they're 7-3. I think a lot of what we're seeing here is Liberty has made some noise in previous seasons. And so I think we're going off of that and reputation. And I know odds makers use that from time to time. They will use the teams that are smaller that have jumped up and gotten a reputation and use that to kind of grab in. Again, some of the casual bettors out there were like, oh, I've been hearing about this Liberty team. Let me go put some money on that Liberty team. Well, Western Kentucky used to be that team. They're not. They're a solid football team. They're coming into this game off of a disappointing loss against Louisiana Tech. And I will say this about a team like Western Kentucky. Yeah, they'll lose games, but when they lose a game the way that they did last week, where they score 7 points, this is a team that prides itself on offense. It'd be one thing if they go out and lose a game where they, gave up 40 points or whatever the case may be. But when they lose a game and they don't do well offensively, they tend to come out gangbusters the next week. Case in point, they opened up the season at Alabama. They lost the game 63-0. Don't let that scare you, folks. It was Western Kentucky. It was Alabama at the beginning of the year. They came out the next week, scored 31 against Eastern Kentucky. In the middle of their season, they lost to Boston College, one of those ball control teams, scored 20 points, which is well underneath what they normally do. They came out the next week, 44 points against UTEP. So last week, against Louisiana Tech team, who should be holding them to 7 points, trust me, Western Kentucky right now, as you and I speak, are going over offensive game plans and how they're going to get their 40 points this week. I don't know if you're going to get 40 against a team like Liberty because, it is a good football team. I just like them to be all the way in their bag, as they say, and be a full functioning offensive weapon this week, and I like them to beat Liberty, who's gotten all the attention.
And that's usually something Western Kentucky does do well. Like you said, they've been an offensive juggernaut over the years.
Yes, they have.
In their conference.
And I like them to be that this week. So I like them as if they're going to get points, 8 point. Give me Western Kentucky on the road.
And we got Western Kentucky +1 off the sheet. Let's attack our head-to-head because you get to pick the game this week. Last week, I was on SMU, much to my chagrin, in our head-to-head matchup. You had BC right. They hung.
Yeah, they hung around, you know. So I grabbed that head-to-head winner. Listen, folks, I said some stuff about me and BYU earlier. I want you to ignore that now, because I am once again gonna jump in the corner of Brigham Young. Now, there's two ways things can go here. BYU suffered a very disappointing loss, and for a team like BYU in this current college football landscape, losing a football game is catastrophic for them if they had aspirations of being in the real big dance and sitting at the table with all of the head of households. One thing I've always been able to rely on with BYU over the years is maturity, and we know the reasons why. These guys have wives and they have children at home. And so I don't think they're going to react like most teams would in this situation, would just get all down in the dumps, cancel Christmas, go half-ass, not really be prepared for this game. I think they come back stronger and want to prove something out in this game. And I know this about the game of football. It really does reward those who have something to prove. And when you've got an entire unit like the BYU Cougars that have something to prove, it's a really forceful thing. They're going to go play Arizona State, who in and of themselves is a really big surprise in college football that people really aren't talking about. The fact that Arizona State, given the season they had last year and what they've been over the last few years, which is majorly mediocre, that they are a ranked football team right now is just should blow everyone's mind. And they're an 8-2 football team. However, right here, a little bit too much respect. Whereas they have been able to climb into this number 21 in the country ranking quietly, now you've made them a 3.5-point favorite against a BYU team that is really, really good. They just weren't last week. I think that's going to be a little bit too much for Arizona State facing the fathers coming in.
You're thinking about this way too hard. You have everything right until the one point you made. They are fathers, and they have had a major disappointment. And no, they're Mormons, so they won't cancel Christmas. But the one thing I don't want to do is I don't want to drop a bunch of 25-year-old Mormons with kids off in Tempe, Arizona for a weekend and expect them to be focused, okay? Arizona State is Florida State of the West, folks.
We know this.
Okay, so I'm dropping these guys off. There's alcohol. There's clubs. There's clubs with scantily clad women. And unless they're getting them there 2 hours before game time, I expect they're going to drown their misery of missing the college football playoff in some of these places when no one's looking. And I think Arizona State is going to drill them on Saturday.
This guy sounds like the biggest pagan you have ever seen in your life.
I'm not a pagan. I'm just telling you what I see happening here.
These guys have
you give your kids, like when they're 18 or 19, you let them have wine with their spaghetti. So then they don't go crazy. You don't lock it up and then you drop them off in Tempe, Arizona and say, "Hey, little Anthony, what are you doing out there? How's science?"
This guy is very Italian. I need to call my mom after the show and ask
Anthony,
her
what are you doing out in Arizona?
Why did I never get wine with my spaghetti? Listen, these guys have got religious doctrine that they are going to fall back on as they move through the streets of Tempe that will keep them out of the whorehouses and the bars.
I have a friend who sent a kid to Arizona State about 8 years ago. I saw him. It wasn't a close friend. I saw him at lunch one day. I said, "Hey, how's he doing out at Arizona State?" He's at Temple now.
Oh, my goodness. What an odd, you left Arizona State to go to a place called Temple.
Yeah. So anyway,
right,
I'll go against you here all day. I'll take Arizona State. Let's move to the part that I've been chomping at the bit to talk about, okay? Our NFL, folks, is on fire. He's on fire all year, okay? But let's start. Last 3 weeks, we're 14-4 against the spread. Eagles are 7-2.
So, did y'all hear that? Repeat that again.
14-4. We're on a heater these last 3 weeks.
If you're going anywhere else for your NFL picks, man, you're messing around.
You're messing around. My friend here, he was 3-0 last week. He had the Saints, nice winner there. He had the Colts outright +4, And then finally,
that one was easy. Too much love on the Jets.
on Monday, on the night game there, the Chargers giving 1.5 to the Bengals. That looked like a great game, Sunday night game, right? That wasn't the Monday night game. That was the Sunday night game. They were up 27-6. And he felt great. I felt great for him. I mean, the Chargers are like one of those teams I like. I like Harbaugh. They're from LA. Everybody knows my affection for LA sports. So I'm like, winner. I switched to Netflix. I checked my phone. Next thing, it's 27-20. I got to turn this game on.
That thing went super sideways fast.
Super sideways, super fast. Fortunately, this year, instead of a guy going for it on 4th and 1 at his own 24, they've got a good football coach in Harbaugh. He steadies the ship.
Definitely, the 2023 Los Angeles Chargers lose that
game. So you were 3-0. Listen to this guy's record for the season, everybody. 24-9. Since I'm the math guy here, let me help you. He's picking 73% of his games against the spread correctly. That's insane. Absolutely insane.
You gotta love it. It's rolling well. Want to keep it continue this.
Now, for me, I had the Steelers +3, outright winner. They are the kryptonite at home for Lamar Jackson. He just doesn't know
one of two teams he just can't solve.
Can't solve. My loser was the 49ers. I don't know what they're doing out there this year. I mean, not only did they not cover, it looked like they were going to win the game by 4 and just not cover. They lost outright. They found a way to just...
Well, they helped you with better psychology. Like, if you're not going to cover the number...
I was all in on that. I was like, you go beat their asses. Yeah. So finally, I just felt like my preseason pick, as well as my friend Chad here, we both had the Bills winning the Super Bowl. So I'm definitely, as you know, if I believe that, and I do, I'm taking them in that spot against the Chiefs. The Chiefs run it. The Chiefs may have been the weakest 9-0 team I recall in my lifetime. Of the few that have made it that far, they were looking to lose a game. It was about time, and it happened. So I was 2-1. I'm up to 17-16, which again is because I'm on a 7-2 run. So I'm feeling good, but I'm going to let you go first because you are the king.
All right, let's jump in the driver's seat here and put this thing into gear. We're going to go to the NFC North, Minnesota and Chicago. Chicago, they've been having issues lately. It's been widely known. This is what happens when you have the number 1 overall pick on your football team and he plays quarterback, not left tackle. So there's going to be a lot of attention sent your way. You know, I got to admit, whatever they told Caleb this week, it looked good early on. But then there was a regression to the mean so far as to what he has shown this season. And I think there is the way they lost that football game last week is super detrimental to their mental health. I think that's going to be a problem for them. I've got to be honest. I have not entirely loved Minnesota over the last month of football that they've played, but they still have managed to win football games. This is an 8-2 football team coming in here. I think that's what they are, 8-2. And they're the winning football team. And I think, a field goal -3 would have been nice here, but I can see Minnesota winning this game by 7 or more in this contest. Chicago's not mentally where they need to be. I think people really know that Matt Eberflus is a sitting duck right now. I'm waiting. It's either going to come this week or next week where, the front office of the Chicago Bears come out and say, we are firmly behind Matt Eberflus. He's our guy for the foreseeable future. That pretty much means he's going to be gone on Black Monday this season. And I think the guys in the locker room are starting to feel it. So maybe they come out with some fire. I don't know why they would. It's not like they're completely out of it. But nevertheless, I think it won't take long for them to fall into the here we go again. And that's when Minnesota is really going to turn up. Furthermore, when you're a rookie quarterback, the worst thing in the world is you want to see a Brian Flores defense running around, disguising looks, disguising blitzes, putting 13 men at the line of scrimmage. That's the worst thing in the world because if, Caleb was holding the football and unsure about what he's been seeing for most of this season, this will be a calculus stats exam for him when he lines up this week. So I don't like it. I think it's going to go far left for them at some point in the middle of this game and allowing Minnesota to take off. So give me the Vikings -3.5. Tennessee is not a team that you are going to write home about. Don't confuse this as a team that has a chance of playing in anyone's postseason. They're a 2-8 football team on paper. They look like a team headed for the number 1 pick overall, and maybe they will. But one thing about Tennessee is they're tough. They're going to play you hard. It's just things haven't rolled their way. This is one of those teams where you look at it, and then next year you say, all right, this team might be one of those teams that turn it around. They play really, really tough defense. They're physical there. And you're taking on a Houston team that has been kind of underwhelming. If you remember in the beginning of this year, I didn't think Houston would be this year what they were last year, and it's kind of worked out that way. They got to win, an easy win, we would say, over your Cowboys that are really, really struggling right now. And they might come into this
And
game.
it wasn't as easy as the score looked. It was
right. It just they didn't plow through those guys. So Houston's been inconsistent. You can call it maybe some injuries that they've had in the receiving core, whatever the case may be. I think it's more of people know you're coming this year. And this is a game Tennessee's definitely going to get up for. It might be maybe the last game this season they get up for. So I think they're going to give Houston everything that they've got in this football game. And if Houston does win the game, which is what is expected, I think it's a field goal type of football game. So give me the 8 points with Tennessee. The Raiders. I got off the Raiders for a couple of weeks. They've been really, really good to me. But, over the last couple of weeks, and especially traveling all the way out here to Miami, not something for you to love, but I can fall back in love with them this week as they invite the Denver Broncos, who've been rolling quite along here. And the Broncos have been able to roll because they've been underdogs and they've been hiding in the darkness, kind of sneaking up on people. Well, this week, they're not sneaking up on anybody because they're going into Las Vegas versus the Raiders as damn near touchdown favorites. This is not good news for the Denver Broncos and their rookie quarterback. And yes, folks, he's been lighting it up. He's still a rookie quarterback. There's going to be a little bit of a fever in there that might not be great for him. I don't like Denver in this spot. If Denver is a small favorite, minus, under 3, or if they're even underdogs for some reason, I love Denver. But I don't like them laying points in here and coming in here with that type of pressure versus a hornet's nest like the Las Vegas Raiders. Because like the Tennessee Titans, the Raiders are still playing tough football. They're out there. I'm seeing a team that's playing ball and not really getting ready to call the Ryder truck to pack stuff up. So I think coming back home after the loss to the Dolphins and facing a divisional opponent as a home underdog, it's a chance for the Raiders to go play tough football, be physical, maybe get some personal fouls and muddy things up for Denver and make this a real fist fight. I like them as 6-point underdogs in this game.
So get your pens out, everybody. Listen, this guy's 24-9. I'll say it again. Here's his 3 picks.
Down.
Here's his 3 picks for the NFL this week. He's got the Minnesota Vikings giving 3.5 against the Bears. Full disclosure, buy the half-point down, pay the extra juice. We're scoring it at 3.5. You shouldn't take a loss because you're cheap. So Vikings minus 3.5. Tennessee Titans +8 against the Houston Texans. And the Las Vegas, God, that still sounds weird. The Las Vegas Raiders +6 against the Denver Broncos. Here's mine. I'm starting off going against my team. Listen, these guys are cashing checks in Dallas this year. This thing has turned into a full-blown disaster. They are the New York Jets of the NFC. You've got guys running around out there, not interested in tackling, not interested in getting hurt, not interested in off-season surgery. Cooper Rush is the quarterback. The Cowboys have $100 million to spend next year in free agency, believe it or not.
Wow.
And they'll have a new coach. Okay, so they've got a lame duck coach. None of that bodes well when you go to play a Washington Redskins team that you killed the last couple of years, and you're facing your old defensive coordinator. If you don't think that he wants to say to Jerry Jones, hey, Jerry, you're going to be hiring a new coach this offseason, it should have been last offseason. It should have been me. This has all the makings of an utter beatdown, and I see like 38-13 as something that looks about appropriate for this game. They're also my survivor pick. Let's kill 2 birds with 1 stone. If you still have Washington available, there's no way I see Dallas traveling up east. And we're going to get snow here, by the way, so it'll at least be sloppy in Washington. Muddy, likely, not happening, okay? They're not winning the game outright. They're not even covering the 10.5. So give me Washington minus 10.5. Next, Dolphins are on a little bit of a winning streak. They started off 2-6. They got the quarterback back. Some things are happening now. They're 4-6. They've got to get on a run, and they have the right schedule in front of them to get on a run. They got the Raiders. Now they're playing the Patriots. This is a team they should beat. They're 7.5-point favorites. The odds makers tell us that. I know the Dolphins played the Patriots well over the years when New England had the upper hand. Now that New England is the team that is inferior, I just see this as blowout city. I think Dolphins, they know they don't have much room for error. I mean, matter of fact, they probably got to win 6 out of their last 7 games or something to make the playoffs. So give me Miami minus 7.5. Finally, I hate when you take a team that wins like Detroit won last week, okay, and then ask them to cover another big number the following week. They watched their own film this week, and they're thinking very highly of themselves. And on the other side, you've got the Indianapolis Colts looking at that film going, we could be embarrassed if we don't bring our A game, okay? And I think that has, a negative impact for Detroit. A side note, it seems like Detroit is, I don't know why. I mean, it's not like Dan Campbell was around for most of it. Seems like they're taking out 40 years or 50 years of frustration on people as if it's everybody else's fault. And they're running up scores. I see things they're doing that, while I won't say they shouldn't do them because everybody gets paid, I find them to be unprofessional. I see passes against Jacksonville. Like, what did Jacksonville ever do to Detroit? Goff's throwing the ball with 5 minutes left in the game. I mean, you're up 40 points. The NFL is a copycat league. People are taking notes. The Lions will not be in this position, history tells us, for a very long time. I mean, my guess is when this ends, there's going to be some people evening scores in the future years against the Lions. This week, though, not to get off the subject, the Colts are getting 7.5. That's a fat number. New England, I mean, Indianapolis is not a bad football team. They're 500 type of team. You're giving them 7.5 points. I think they look at that film last week and go, we don't want that to be us. And I think they give Detroit a much better game. And I actually have the Lions on upset alert this week. I think if they're not careful, they could get caught against a team they don't expect to lose to. So give me the Colts.
All right, summarizing Emil's picks for this week, he is going against his beloved. I don't think they're beloved this year for him. He's kind of out there. They're sleeping in separate bedrooms. Yeah. He's going to take the Washington Redskins, as we call them on this show, as 10.5-point favorites against the Dallas Cowboys. He thinks it's yet another week of blowout football for the Cowboys, and a bunch of interviews with the head coach, general manager, and owner of the Dallas Cowboys, Jerry Jones. He likes the Dolphins to keep moving up and reversing. This would have been a crazy pick 10 years ago, but we are in 2024. The Patriots are what they are post Bill Belichick. He likes the Dolphins to stomp all over them in the humidity of Miami in November. He likes the Dolphins as 7.5-point favorites. And then he has put the Detroit Lions on upset watch. This is the Detroit Lions that went out and scored 52 points last week. I think they've been 50-plus points twice this season. He thinks the Indianapolis Colts can pull the outright upset in this game. Hey, you might, if you're loaded like that, throw a little change on the money line and see what comes back. He likes the Colts plus 7.5. Just a note on something that you said there. I don't think Dan Campbell is the kind to have that ego to run up scores for the sake of piling up numbers because, people care about stuff. That's for like offensive coaches like the Mike Martzes of the world. I think if I'm trying to jump into his mind, I think Dan Campbell is trying to build up something in the minds of this Detroit team and maybe all those around that we are not that loser franchise anymore. We are mighty. So when you get into that NFL postseason and you start running into a situation like you did against San Francisco last year, you have cleared out all the doubt because you kicked all of these people's asses during the year. So you don't, maybe doing what you're doing right now doesn't allow
and that's
that.
Very well an astute observation, and I'll take more about that part of the game than I do. So
but you're right. I don't disagree with the pick, but you're right. When the check comes due, there will be a price to pay. I think if you're Dan Campbell, we're living now. We
Yeah,
win
you're
now.
living now. And listen, they're my
We win a
Super
Super
Bowl
Bowl,
pick for the
get to a
NFC.
Super Bowl. I don't care what happens 3 years from
And
now.
they're
We'll
my
be okay.
Super Bowl pick for the NFC, so I'm not
No,
anti-Detroit
you're looking good.
by any
You're,
means.
you're looking.
Now, listen, before we end the show, we have to go head-to-head here, right? Last
Sure.
week, I don't know what you were thinking, okay?
Wait a minute. I didn't pick that game. I got forced into that thing. I made a good.
The fans think I'm not reverse jinxing. I told him at the beginning of the season, I'll admit, I had the Cowboys at 9-8. I didn't think they'd be a good team. Like you had them much better than I did. I watched this offseason, and I said to myself, this guy doesn't have a clue. I mean, it's one thing to say we don't value the running back position. It's another thing to say, hey, Calomino, you got 10 carries in you this week? Okay.
I just want to say this to you. The position I found myself in last week was how every defense attorney feels when there's video of your client actually murdering the person that he's on trial for. That's how I felt. And I couldn't summon up the lords of Johnny Cochran and whoever in the hell else to make my case.
Tried to make a case. That the Cowboys season, the epitome of it was the left tackle rookie Guyton picking up the fumble, trying to run with it, getting re-stripped of the ball, and the game essentially ending there on a run back, fumble recovery touchdown. So anyway, I get to pick the game this week. Found an interesting one, and I have an angle on it. The Rams are a well-coached football team. You know how, it's not just my side affair that I have with the LA teams. I admit I'm a closet Rams fan going back.
That's well documented on this show.
The Jack Youngblood days of broken legs and Super Bowls. Okay, Pat Hayden, USC. But honestly, the Rams started 1-4, and if you look at their games early in the year, close loss to the Bears on the road, close, a bunch of 6-point, 5-point losses. They're 1-4. They're 5-5 now. The Rams have won 4 out of 5 ball games. The only loss was against the desperate Dolphins team on Monday night in a game they kicked 5 field goals. Now they come home. They're only getting 2.5 points against a team that I hear people saying they might be the NFC representative in the Super Bowl. Nick Sirianni, he's a genius again with his Italian flag on his sweatshirt and on his hat, and yelling at the fans. This is a trap game for the Eagles. This is a Monday night game. McVay will have the Rams ready. The Rams are right in the thick of it, really. I mean, and if Arizona takes a loss on Sunday, could potentially find themselves playing for a first place tie, a 4-way. We have the potential, by the way, folks, for a 4-way tie after 11 weeks if the Seahawks beat the Cardinals, the 49ers beat the Packers, and the Rams we'd have a 4-way tie at 6-5. I like the Rams, obviously, to win the game. I mean, they're only getting 2.5 points. I think this is a trap spot for the Eagles, who have been playing good football, admittedly, the last 4 or 5 weeks.
Well, thank God this week I don't have to play Bruce Cutler trying to get John Gotti off of some kind of, RICO charge. This one I can actually do good work here because, hey, it's documented on this show, if you're an avid watcher of the show, that I'm not impressed with Nick Sirianni, was not impressed with the Philadelphia Eagles. However, one thing I know you can't be in this game is stubborn. And I'm talking in the game of picking games. If you, have someone whose games you pick and you aren't very good at picking them, don't be stubborn. Don't keep picking those games. There's a blind spot in there. Speaking of blind spots, I can't continue to attach myself to the Nick Sirianni's not good and the Eagles aren't that when I watch what they've done over the last few weeks. And I think a lot of this coincides with the return of A.J. Brown and the maturation of Saquon Barkley in this offense to where he's now really feeling comfortable enough to turn his back to a guy and jump over him like he's in a video game. I think all those things are coming together. And as I look at what has happened here over the last few weeks, yeah, we can't be impressed by wins over Jacksonville and Dallas. That's the bottom of the league. But you went out and beat Washington last week, which by all accounts is a good football team. 4 weeks ago, you went into Cincinnati and beat the Bengals by 20 points. you look at this ledger here and you look at, this 6-game run, and it's a good football team. I'm going to
Are
have
you
to.
handicapping this game in 2021? The Bengals?
I don't know.
The
That's it.
Bengals?
You went to Cincinnati. You went to Cincinnati and beat a good Cincinnati team.
I don't care if you went to Cambodia and beat them. They're horrible.
You went and beat a good offensive Cincinnati Bengals football team and held them to 17 points. That is something to behold.
I'm already looking at next week's schedule because I'll be picking the NFL game again next week.
As much as he's trying to jump in here, I feel like, I don't know, something went wrong here where you're only giving Philadelphia the opportunity to lay 3 points here. I watched the Rams game last week for obvious reasons. And it's a game that they probably should have lost, except New England couldn't outdo their New Englandish post Bill Belichick, because the Patriots
is giving my Rams no credit for flying across the country.
The Pats offense went straight down the field on the first series and scored. Got the ball, went straight down the field on the second series. Should have been up 14-0. And then
we're not going to admit that maybe Drake Mayne's a good quarterback, huh?
Yes, maybe. And then the Rams maybe aren't that good on defense. And if you're going to let rookie Drake May and whatever it is that they call weapons on offense for the Patriots go straight down the field, what's Jalen Hurts and Devontae Smith and Saquon Barkley and A.J. Brown going to do? Move straight down the field. And on top of all that, that stadium's 50-50 at home when the Rams are there for what? They'll be Philly fans. So
it's still better than when the Chargers are there and it's 2080.
Well, exactly. I don't know what's going on in Los Angeles. Maybe the tickets are high and they're selling.
Folks, listen, that's it.
I'm taking the Eagles.
That's it for us. Nick's, he's got the Eagles. His coach will be looking for cannoli somewhere in West Hollywood. I've got the Rams. We're out of here. You got to subscribe to the show, right?
Yes, most definitely.
We're going to win. We know we're trying to fix college for you, but we're going to win in the NFL. I feel great about it. I really do.
We're going to win in college too, folks.
Yep.
That's it. So on your way out, hit the subscribe button and drop a comment if you're watching us on YouTube. We'd really appreciate that. It helps us grow the show. So do that for us, two chumps, before Emil opens up a 1-900 number and starts selling these picks. All right? We're out of here. We'll see you guys next week.